All right, I'm particularly excited about this after meeting you. So you need to get you to be on our Leaders Who Care series and share why you are a leader who cares. I know already, but the rest of the people need to know that's yes here. So welcome to the series.
Thank you so very much. I'm delighted to spend the time with you.
Thanks. Best ways to start, which we always do, is if you could, and I usually have to clarify this. Mind you, you have to clarify usually more for men than women. Women seem to understand it faster than men. Is can you introduce yourself? Tell us about you, where you are originally from, where you are now, maybe about family as much as you want to share, maybe something you've never told the world that you want to reveal to the world now. That's always fascinating to hear if there's anything like that. And then we'll get into the business stuff. Does that work?
Absolutely. So I was not born in Atlanta, but I like to think of myself as an Atlanta girl. We've been here since I was in third grade, and after going away to college and working for a few years at Mckinsey in New York, I came back home. So I'm a strategic advisor, management consultant. Don't hold that against me. As
I
I
promise.
mentioned, former McKinsey, Harvard alum, Harvard undergrad alum. And I built my practice around
Okay, I'm going to time you out. I'm going to
sure.
time you out. We can get into that in a minute. I want to know more about you and not the business you, type of thing.
Ah,
Like your family, siblings, things about that we should know about you that aren't the business part.
I see. So as I mentioned, I live in Atlanta. I am single, single, not married, no kids.
Is
I like
single,
to think of
is single, like air
like three
conditioner?
singles, right? And no kids. And so I like to think of myself as a bit of a free spirit. One of the things that you mentioned, like people don't necessarily know about me, is that my family's from the Caribbean. So
Ah,
both parents are Jamaican. So there was a kind of growing population of the Caribbean people in the east side of the metro in Atlanta. And my mom and I came here, and I am a longtime meditator. And so next week, I'm going to go to a 10-day silent retreat.
wow.
And I'm looking forward to that, especially in these very fraught times. It's great to have a little bit of internal quiet and internal peace, as we were just talking about.
Yeah.
And Yeah, that's a little bit about me.
That's cool. I love Jamaica. I've been to Jamaica many times when I used to live in Miami. Negril,
Mm.
Rose Hall, Montego Bay, um, you name it. It's so much fun and love the food and everything. So I kind of missed that because it was a hop, skip, and a jump from Miami to to get there and stuff. And so that's super cool. Do you eat Jamaican food? Do you cook Jamaican food?
I both cook and eat Jamaican food.
Nice, really good.
I am a decent cook, but let's be clear, that is my only domestic skill. Like, don't count on me for anything else. That's the only one. But
Well,
I've been told if there's one to have, that's a good one.
well, if,
So,
I'll stereotype. I'm Jewish. So I'll stereotype us that we're not good at a lot of those things either, the domestic stuff. But we do love food. There's no doubt about it. So thanks for sharing that. It'd be nice to bring some of the world's leaders to that meditation. If you can gather them up and bring them out there, that would be very helpful.
great, we're trying.
What were you like as a kid? Did you grow up as a kid in Jamaica? And
No, so I did my growing up in Atlanta in a suburb called Stone Mountain.
okay.
And oh my goodness, I was a total nerd. So I'm gonna date myself. There was a show called Family Matters, and there was a character called Steve Urkel. I don't know if you remember,
Oh, of
this
course. How can you
super
forget?
nerdy guy with the big glasses and the very not particularly well dressed. I was the female version of Steve Urkel. Socially
Wow.
awkward, big glasses, super nerdy. That was me.
But he was loved.
He was loved, right? Like he was loved, but yeah, yeah. So I was definitely a nerd.
That's hilarious. Well, did you I was talking to a guy recently, said he played with Legos as a kid all the time. What were you interested in? Was it music, sports, reading? What were you
I
interested
was a big bookworm. I was a big bookworm, and I was like a fantasy sci-fi bookworm. So I read the J.R. Tolkien series a whole bunch of times, Weiss
Wow.
and Hickman, A Wrinkle in Time, a little bit of Isaac Asimov, some of those very classic, Ray Bradbury classic sci-fi fantasy type. Yeah.
Nice. Any particular music you liked?
I played the viola, and I was in the
Wow.
DeKalb Youth Pops Orchestra for a while. Um, mm,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, if I had to pull that one out of you. That's like super cool.
yeah,
Well, you're hiding stuff. What else? Did you play
yeah.
any sports, or you mostly the other side of it?
No, I was definitely a bookworm. I was actually both a bookworm and a couch potato until my mid-20s.
Oh, okay. So, it's interesting. I saw something with a kid a few months ago. They were showing a 2-year-old a book, and
Yeah,
he was trying to slide like on a computer on the book
that's so funny.
because the times have changed, right?
Right?
Type of thing. So, yeah, funny and kind of sad at the same time in a way. So, education wise, as you said, you went to Harvard, bachelor's, applied math and economics.
That's right.
Why that major, and what were you envisioning for yourself?
Mm. So I thought I was going to be an engineer. I liked math as a child, um, you know, bookworm, nerd. And somebody said, well, you should be an engineer. So I had to start off an engineering major, thought I was going to be an engineer. Went to an internship after my freshman year and was totally bored, like totally bored. And I was like, okay, this isn't for me. But I was thinking about what was I interested in? Definitely interested in business and where could I apply the math skills? And Harvard does not or did not have an undergraduate business degree, but people who were interested in business did economics at Harvard. And then the people who wanted to do an honors track, which I did math and economics. So that's how I ended up there. And for me, it felt very intuitive. And the reason why I've always loved math is for me, it feels like it's God's language. Like I can go anywhere in the universe and math applies.
True.
I can go anywhere in the world and, people understand and can universally communicate through numbers. And so I've always loved math in that way and for that reason.
And did you going through college and whatnot, did you have any things that stood out, any inflection points as to where that would lead you to at the time?
Mm, I always, after that internship, I knew I wanted to pursue a business career. And actually found McKinsey pretty early. Like when I started asking about what does one do after college in business, everybody's like, well, if you can get into McKinsey, go there. Um, and so
Was
I started researching them and ended up in a summer internship program at McKinsey and then got hired out of college from there.
super smart. That's good advice to young people. You get in something like that, you're in, and then you show your stuff and ever. You can't go wrong with a career start at McKinsey. I was at Deloitte. I mean, bottom line is you have the name and you have the experience, so it's good foundation, right?
Mhm.
So with at McKinsey, you were involved in correct me if I'm wrong, in recruiting tools for the company. You were involved in, saving millions of dollars, product offerings, statistical analysis. I mean, and a bunch of different types of clients, I believe, just by looking up some stuff.
Right?
Any specific experiences stand out for you that just like you amazed you, or you just were more excited about, or particular companies?
Certainly some of the larger, Fortune 20 companies that I worked with certainly stood out. And just coming from, my mom was a say, this is another thing, right? I'm holding out on you. My mom raised me as a single parent. So, and she's a nurse. So, pretty humble beginnings. To go from that to like being on the inside, deep on the inside of companies that were so big, was really transformational for me.
I bet.
And just really getting the firsthand inside look on how large corporations work, I think was, absolutely foundational for the rest of my career.
Yeah.
And certainly, regardless of, whether or not it was, certain companies that are public, like American Express, that have worked for McKinsey for a long time, or the other companies that people don't necessarily know, or their relationship with McKinsey is confidential. Just being really able to understand how corporations work, I think, across the different corporations is incredibly helpful.
I think some of them work good and some of them actually don't.
Agreed.
Unfortunately.
But it's the reality of how this is what business looks like.
And I think that what you raise is a great point too. Sometimes we take for granted when we're in it that everybody understands how that works,
Mhm.
and even the simple things of talking on the phone, talking, engaging with people, presenting yourself, etc. Um, People have to be exposed to those type of things to know you because you don't know. People, a lot of people don't know, and so I mean, what a great opportunity and a great opportunity when, and I'm not saying McKinsey is like this, but there's not always equal access and equal opportunity for people to have some of those experiences. And that's why I was asking if there's any that stood out. Was there any, you don't have to name names, but any company or any project that like blew you away type of thing in any way?
Well, certainly the time I spent in South Africa was life-changing.
Hmm.
And I had the opportunity to work with the private public partnership that manages all of the ports in South Africa, or managed all of the ports in South Africa. So I literally got to go to like all of the coastal cities in South Africa. It was stunning, right? Just the
I
visual
bet.
experience and being able to go to all these amazingly beautiful places,
Well, you know,
certainly was meaningful. And then, the experience of going and understanding how to cut costs across all of those ports was really really important as well.
were you the Elon Musk of South Africa?
Not at all, not at all.
Of like Doge type of thing. Um, were there, or let me ask you this way: have you been able to take forward, or what experiences were you able to take forward to assist your clients currently in your own Anonna Enterprises?
Wow. So certainly the very rigorous structured approach to problem solving, I use that like every day. And I think across, all consultants, former McKinsey consultants, they'll talk about how, we've learned how to solve problems. Really, we really do. Um, and I think also you mentioned just the business acumen and learning to communicate and think in a particular way that
Mhm.
is very, very precise. It's very efficient. Like, I don't know that they still do this, but certainly in the first month in McKinsey, you were trained to distill any communication down to like 3 points that you can communicate within 30 seconds. And that's incredibly helpful now as I engage with executives, because you have they what scientists have shown, you get 11 seconds basically to make an impression on somebody, and being able to really captivate somebody and grab their attention very quickly with a very precise business communication is something that I use more than once a day.
Who was it?
Certainly.
Was it Freud or somebody said that if you can't explain it for a baby to understand, then you're not explaining it properly or something like
Right.
that. Yeah.
Right. And being able to build high impact performance teams is also, been really, really huge for me. Like, being able to put together a task force or a team, whatever word you want to use for a group of people that can mobilize against an issue, and being able to do that effectively and put them together in a way that they perform, I think, is huge. And then finally, just really understanding the executive mindset is, you know, huge. Can't be overstated.
Yeah, and there's different mindsets of different of executives too, but I know exactly what you mean. Did you, I think it was McKinsey, some people in McKinsey had told me this at one time. I don't know if they still do it, but there would always be, and at Deloitte where I was, we didn't have it officially, but we encouraged someone to challenge whatever way forward the people were talking about in the meeting. In other words, go against it, challenge it basically. Kind of like in school, you were put on a debate team to debate the other side that you didn't believe in, but you had to debate it anyway on the other side.
Mhm.
Did you find that at all differing points of view to then come to a proper plan of action or stuff like that?
Yes, certainly. And I mean, McKinsey, does a lot of internal discussion around a non-hierarchical approach to problem solving,
Hmm.
that they really want the best solution to the issue, regardless of whoever it comes from. So I think that certainly yes, I would say that's the case.
So with that, well, our firm was actually launched at the UN about 6.5 years ago at the UN headquarters on International Women's Day, because that was
Mm.
one of our first focuses was women leadership, equal access, equal opportunity for women. I mean, our very first event was actually in Delhi, India, young women entrepreneurs and engaging them in entrepreneurship and different things like that. And so as a woman, as a black woman, did you, how did you describe your journey as a woman? There was diverse partnerships, there's different people in different businesses, different types of executives. How did you navigate? How did you thrive in that? And and um, and then be able to, it has to be economically viable, the consulting you're doing, but you also want it to be sustainable, for the client. How did you, what did you feel like as a woman and as a black woman in that world?
Well, this is where, this may not necessarily be palatable to your audience, but I'm gonna speak my truth, which is,
It's, it's
I
palatable. It's palatable to hear truth.
right, for some people. Um, so what I'll say is this. Yeah, I jokingly say that I might be single-handedly responsible for the angry black woman stereotype because, I I definitely started off as a very, very angry black woman. But I would tell people, like, if you're a black woman and you're not angry, then you probably don't have a pulse. know, yeah, for real. And we can have a conversation about microaggressions, we can have a conversation about institutional racism and all of that, right? Um, and what I found is there's a point in my career where I even approached a mentor and I was like, how do you get through this without just becoming overwhelmingly bitter? Right? I was like, if this continues, I'm just going to end my career and my life completely taken over by bitterness. And I don't want that. That's not my true nature. That's not who I really am. But one does, and I did sustain a whole bunch of impacts, right? Like that's just the reality of being um, in a hierarchical business environment, right? And what I found, which will lead to, I think, some other things that we're going to talk about, is that, there's a way to turn, even spiritually, a way to turn even the most difficult experiences to something that's useful and meaningful. And for me, I've gotten a lot of meaning out of conscious capitalism because one of the pillars of conscious capitalism, if businesses do really turn to that kind of holistic, stakeholder oriented approach, an approach from a higher purpose and really looking at culture and values, is inequity will be dealt with because it's inevitable.
Hmm.
And that, you can't have a values-based system of human beings and have inequity. Those things are not compatible spiritually. And so, learning through my own journey to use some of the things that happened to me to then turn it to a higher purpose, which for me, my higher purpose is that every single business on the planet will begin to operate along conscious business principles. That's my higher purpose. And
Right.
so to be able to take that, negative karma, if you will, and turn it to something useful is really my journey.
No, no, I love it, and it aligns very well with why we trademark the term "leaders who care" and why we ask clients questions before they become clients, a lot of questions, but also what do they care about, and it's about economic and social impact, both. It's not a bad thing to make money, and it's not a bad thing to make a difference. Why can't we do them both at the same time? Because for years it was you go to a nonprofit to make no money because you want to make a difference, or you go to a company and you're greedy but just making money, you don't care about anything,
Right.
basically. Little extreme, but that's what it was. That would seem to be the model, and so I love what you're saying because the leaders we work with, the leaders we engage with around the world are really do care about making money because they know they need to be able to make a social or environmental impact, and they care about their employees and they care about their communities, et cetera, et cetera. So. Um, it sounds like to me that kind of aligns. And did you, after McKinsey, what you've been doing, what you've done, and what you've been doing, is that the path? How did you define the path you wanted to follow after McKinsey?
Oh, this is exciting. So, yeah, I was doing strategic advisory work and I had always had a great interest in mid-market companies. So not, super small companies because they don't have really the scale or the budget to hire high-end consultants, but not big enterprise companies like the ones that I was working at McKinsey because of all the things that we just discussed.
Hmm.
But I found a great love for mid-sized businesses because they're often still run by the founding team, and there was something about that part of the market that really fascinated me. And so I started a podcast called CEO Exclusive, where I was interviewing the CEOs of a lot of them were Inc. 5000 fast growth companies, and they kept telling me about this phenomenon about how they were using their businesses as a platform for good. And this like holistic approach to, including employee concerns and thinking about the business more, kind of in this broader frame.
Hmm.
And after about 100 interviews, I interviewed JBN Consulting, and one of their partners was like, word for that. It's called conscious capitalism. And I just lost it. I was like, oh my God, like this is it. Like, tell me everybody. And there's like who's involved in this. And I found out there was a chapter and there's people and there's a movement and there's books and like all this stuff, right? Because I just never knew that other people felt that way. Had grown up business wise in the blood sucking part of capitalism. Remember, like I was in McKinsey and like I was like, that's what it means to be capitalist. You just suck blood and extract and whatever. So to find out that there's this whole other point of view and a whole other paradigm was just very exciting to me.
Hmm.
So, fell in love with the contest capitalism chapter. We started a budding relationship. COVID hit, delayed, blah blah. So most recently, we've had a joint partnership called Capitalism Done Right, where I basically am still interviewing and having conversations with that same group of mid-market companies, but we're focused more narrowly on conscious capitalism. But Mark, the capitalism side of conscious capitalism, which is what you're talking about, which is not only is it great, not only does it take care of the broadest group of stakeholders, but it also makes more money. And that's the thing that we have to, when I say you, I mean we, I mean you and me, people who are interested in a greater adoption of this kind of way of doing business, have to reinforce that it actually makes more money. It's not that just that it's good.
100%. And I love the way you phrase it. We found time and time again that the leaders who really did care about the um, financial, physical, and mental well-being of their people and their communities and whatnot did better in every aspect. People, consumers, being able to attract the best talent when they were doing good at the same time. And it's not even rocket science. The great people we talk to that are open to great opportunities want to go where they can make great money and have purpose at the same time. They want to have experiences, not just years of experience, but actual experiences that either um, are treasured or cherished in their life, and it's from business and from people that they meet. They want to live and make money at the same time. And why would we want it any other way, right?
The challenge here, because one of the things, the questions I love to ask is, well, if it's so great, why isn't it that's already had reached full adoption, right? Why aren't we already doing business this way? And the challenge is, Mark, that there are some short-term trade-offs that in this market, a lot of companies are not willing to make, or especially if they're publicly traded, they're not able to make because in many cases companies have to trade off short-term profit in order to do some investing to get the longer term higher,
Right.
higher profitability, lower employee turnover, et cetera, right? All the financial benefits that come from doing business this way. So it involves a little bit of delayed gratification that if a company is in the public markets, typically they're not able to do. So it's
Yeah,
not
yeah,
it's
you're.
not necessarily as straightforward as it might sound,
Oh, it never is, but for some
right?
reason, but not but. And the number of C-suite people I've talked to that talk about how not hate, that's not the wrong word, how they dislike the emphasis put on quarterly reporting all the time. I mean, 3 months is a blip. in things, and how sometimes they're not able to make, happens in a lot of businesses, a decision that they know would be great, but they can't make it because of the quarterly reporting
Exactly.
and stuff. Even people, even talent, maybe Joe or Jane didn't make a sale this quarter, and the evaluation sucks because she didn't make a sale, but she's going to make three huge ones in 2 quarters that she's working on. That's something, and just that's a simple example of what needs to be looked at, in stuff like that, and even in the community, what is the brand of the company in the community that makes consumers say, hey, that's the type of company we want to buy from, and these things, and you're right, they are hard decisions. Sometimes they're decisions made just to keep their jobs, and then things of that nature, and so it sounds like one of the common points we're talking about is maybe we're not looking at the long picture enough, to be able to have everybody, like you say, jump on. There's been a lot more when we first started Leaders Who Care. It was thought of super soft, it's infamous soft skills at the beginning and fluffy care, schmear, type of thing. But more and more and more, we're seeing why it's important, to have it, and because that's where you do get the best talent, and so on. But yeah, it's not easy. But like you said, if it was easy, everybody would do it.
Mhm.
So I want to ask you something also. Times are changing so fast. They say the fourth industrial revolution has been clearly defined as AI and technology.
Yeah.
AI leading the way there, incredibly fast and furious. First, they were talking, well, it's been around, AI has been around for decades, but now it's really been hit and marketing is up. But they also say the fifth is potentially about humanity. Share how you and all the entrepreneurs and corporate people that you talk to, how you see it, they're strategically utilizing AI. How are they looking at it? How are you looking at it with respect to creativity and imagination, and the impact it's going to have on employees and their families and community in general? What's your thoughts on that?
Mhm. I think in the short term, it's relatively straightforward. So, in my observation and from what I'm hearing, if you look at any entry level white collar job, whether or not it's paralegal or being an analyst at McKinsey or working in an accounting firm, etc., most of those jobs at the very lowest levels are gathering information and synthesizing it in some way.
Yeah.
AI is going to completely wipe that out. And I think, I was sharing an article a couple days ago, maybe like a week ago, about how McKinsey has already developed its own internal AI to like replace, some significant portion of their incoming analyst class and associate class. That is either happening or has happened. And so what's going to happen, I expect, is it'll be like the self-checkouts at the supermarket where, you know, if you had six cashiers before, you go down to one cashier that's supervising the machines. I think it'll be very much the same with the AIs. Instead of having an analyst class of 60, which is what I was in at McKinsey for my first year in New York, it's going to go down to five, maybe 10, and then, they'll supervise the AIs that are doing all the work. So the question that I don't really know, and I think is a societal question, and I would be interested to hear if you have something to say about this, is then what happens with the five people that now paid for a Harvard education and like can't get a job? Like what happens with them? I don't know how those resources will be redeployed and like what the workforce will look like, but I mean that's happening.
Yeah, it's happening, and Amazon just laying off a lot of people because AI is going to take over and things like that, and accounting and legal and all a lot of things will be taken over. I mean, we're having discussions, and kind of like we say in LA, we want to leave the audience wanting more, so we'll have to do a sequel. But I'll just make one comment on it.
Yeah, cool.
We're having discussions a lot about certainly upskilling, and certain people will be able to be upskilled, but we're also having discussions on the people you're talking about. How are they going to get to those next positions if they don't have the experience of those positions that are being eliminated? How are they going to jump to management positions? Because sometimes it's not just what you've learned, in those positions. It's what you've learned of how to be in those positions, where things are derived from having matured. I mean, so many things to get you to the next levels. And I think that's going to be important. And and this is a bigger discussion. One of the things we're talking to certain executives about is what responsibility do corporates have to keep certain people that maybe can't even be upskilled, pay them the salary, which is now called universal income, and but I think we make decisions too much on titles and not on solutions, um, and maybe have those people work in the communities as teacher aides or caregivers, or doing planting gardens in every school across the country, or cleaning up parks, or whatever people want to do to make a difference in their community and feel good about themselves, rather than the cost it's going to have everybody on unemployment, not being able to afford healthcare, get sick, need money, steal food, whatever. There's going to all sorts of things happen. Maybe there's got to be a mindset change that is about good business to keep those people on, because if you don't, you'll have to pay higher taxes to support all the people anyway that are on unemployment. And think of a big mindset. It's a hard thing to do. Of we are about making money, and this is actually good for business to do it in that type of thing. So.
Yeah, but that hasn't historically been the case. I mean, what has happened, and what you're talking about is coming from the mind of somebody who's clearly a conscious capitalist. What has happened with, coercive capitalism or extractive capitalism is when you have productivity gains like this, the productivity gains do not get distributed throughout the population. What happens is it accrues to the people, the economic shareholders of the business, right? So I don't anticipate that those McKinsey partners who are choosing not to hire that class of analysts are now all of a sudden going to be like, oh, we're going to go out and we're going to hire a bunch of people to plant trees and help. No, they're not doing that.
But you
They're
don't,
going to
yeah,
take that, 10, 20, $30 million and they're going to take it to the bank. That's what they're going to do, right? Like they're not going to help nobody with that.
I can't disagree. I can't disagree. However, when it's felt that how much it's going to cost them, and not McKinsey only, we're not focusing on them, but how it's going to cost them more if more and more people can't be upskilled and are out there and in the community, what's going to happen, and maybe there's an in between there, but it's a big topic to think about because
It's
you know,
huge. It's everything. Because
as
if
I
you think, I mean, in the doomsday post-apocalyptic version of this, you think about a whole, not so much women, but whole class of men, right? A million men who are not unemployed, with no future, no, like that's a recipe for civil unrest.
we're seeing it,
So,
we're seeing it already a little bit.
right, for sure.
Yeah.
But the people who are the economic stakeholders at the top of the food chain, they're going to go to Mars with Elon, right? Like they're not necessarily invested. What has historically happened, not that it's going to happen, what has historically happened is they try to pull some sort of escape hatch rather than reinvesting in society. But this is me being a little bit of the angry. Sorry, the angry black woman escaped just for a second.
Well,
Sorry, we'll put her,
well,
we'll put her
why
back
don't we
on.
just let them go to Mars? Okay, last thing I'll say on this is I was at a conference, it's called like No Whatnot, and Jeff Bezos was there, and Bill Nelson of NASA was asking him questions, and they were talking about, they ended up talking about leadership and leaders and whatnot, and and getting a different perspective. And a founder of our company is one of the founders is an astronaut, and somebody said there, maybe we should send them up in Jeff's space rocket or something to take a different perspective of what the world looks like from up there,
Mm.
which was interesting. But then a few people yelled out, and maybe we should leave them there for a while, actually. And so when you say all of them going to Mars, that could actually be not a bad thing
Right.
for us down here. But it's all thought, and it's happening so fast. I do think AI is going to have a lot of benefit for a lot of things, especially healthcare. We just have to figure out, how to work together on that. But that'll be on our sequel. So I have one last question here for you. Um, that's more Maya Angelou, and make everybody know, everybody always remembers how people made them feel, type of
Mm.
thing. Um, I had a client once told me in 2021, he said, the year 2020, the pandemic was the year that flew by slowly. And I thought, pretty well right on. And now it feels like COVID was yesterday and years ago, all the time, for a lot of people. We're in the second half of 2025 already. With all that said, what are you most grateful for and what are you most hopeful for?
Mm. Thank you. I think I'm most grateful for my relationships. Certainly. And maybe that's a little bit of a cliche, but it's just the
Never a
truth,
cliche.
right? And in particular, I'll say that sometime around 2021, I started to really synthesize all of the learnings and the experiences that I'd had interviewing the CEOs. And I was in, I would say, a bit of an existential crisis about the future of my career. And I started to really think about my own values because I had been hearing all the stuff around. Like, so what are my values? And I made a decision that I thought was hard, which is like, I only want to work with companies and with leaders whose values are consistent with mine. Because I had noticed like all this disturbance in my previous years about like working with companies and leaders that were misaligned. And I was like, wow, I'm never going to work again. And like, how's that going to work? You know? Especially because I didn't realize how many people were starting to really evolve to this way of thinking. Um, and it wasn't the case. Like my last project where I was more or less functioning as an interim fractional chief of staff was with a beautiful conscious leader. Like I just was so amazed and impressed with
Mhm.
how she handled her people. And before I made that decision, like I didn't think it was possible to work for somebody like that. I'd only seen the more extractive kind of capitalism, from my earlier career. So people like that really deeply inspire me about what is possible through business still.
Mhm.
Like business actually can be a force for good. And the people like you and the people like Patricia is her name, and the people like the folks at Conscious Capitalism, both the national organization, John Mackey, Kip Tyndall, folks in Atlanta, Chris Hooper, Jeff Bond, like both excite me. That's the hopeful part, right? And I'm
Mhm.
grateful for them because they make my business life like good. Like I'm having fun. Like this is not a hardship being with you.
Right.
It's never a hardship being with them. And this is what work should be like, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Work
Thanks.
should be life-giving.
100%. Thanks for sharing that. And that is totally aligned with us in, the leaders who do care should be able to be the ones that do the best. And why shouldn't we care? It's not a job. It's life. It's part of our life, a big part of our life. And why shouldn't we be able to do good in making money and in social and environmental impact? So thank you for sharing that. Thank you for being a leader who cares. Thank you for being a new friend. I'm grateful for that. We have a new friend, and I'm actually hopeful for all the same stuff that you are a leader who cares and a new friend. So we're going to make the future bright. Thanks for being on the series.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.